I just had a terrific meeting with the former president, President Bill Clinton, and we just happened to have this as a topic of conversation. And I thought, given the fact that he presided over as good an economy as we've seen in our lifetimes, that it might be useful for him to share some of his thoughts.
Wow, a couple of heavyweights there. Welcome back to Hardball. That's President Obama late today with President Clinton at his side at the presidential briefing room. Syndicated radio host Michael Smerconish, my friends here, an MSNBC political analyst as well. And Ron Reagan, of course, is the author of the upcoming book, My Father at 100. We all want to go over that when we get that book out. And I've got an advanced look at it already. Let me go to Michael Smerconish, because this is about your audience out there. That suburban audience and all those counties outside of big cities that voted for Barack Obama the last time. They wouldn't consider themselves net roots or progressives in many cases, but they are people who liked Obama from the beginning, may still like him potentially. Has he begun to win them back with this deal?
I think so. I think that the group that you talk about are looking for less hyper-partisanship, more pragmatism. Compromise is not a dirty word to the people that you're identifying. And, Chris, you know what I think of as I look at that imagery? It's hard for me to identify anyone on the political spectrum of America, including the far right, that would be displeased in seeing the presence of Bill Clinton. I think if you told me that a couple of years ago, I'd have had a hard time believing it. But even on the far right, he's viewed as being less toxic, and they look back at those issues from the mid-'90s and say, geez, was that really such a big deal in retrospect? That was a pre-Al-Qaeda, pre-bad economy world. We'd take it back.
You know, Ron, a couple of weeks ago, the Republicans were running around calling the President of the United States a socialist or worse. Now they're calling him a partner in a deal. I guess there's a plus there, even for people that may disagree with the President on the elements in this deal. Your thoughts? I don't know where you stand yet, so here we go.
Well, I think to the question of independence, I think if I can be equivocal, it's going to help him and it's going to hurt him. It's going to help him in the sense that he got something done. You know, and people like to see something done. They like to see the government moving forward. On the other hand, the method that he used to get to the place where he got eventually, with a big tax cut for rich people, is going to upset some people. People like leaders who have convictions that they're willing to fight for. And he's gotten into this habit, it seems, of giving away the store before he even enters into negotiations. And I'm not sure that that's going to please independents. It's certainly not going to please, of course, progressives, liberals, people on the left.
Well, let's take a look at what Charles Krauthammer, a man of the right wing, said today in a weirdly ironic support for the bill. He doesn't like the bill at all. He thinks it's a giveaway to the left. He said it's a great tax cut showdown of 2010. He said the House Democrats don't have a clue what happened here. While getting Republicans to boost his own reelection chances, he gets them to make a mockery of their newfound second chance post-Bush Tea Party. This time we're serious persona of debt-averse fiscal responsibility. Well, Ron Reagan, you're right there. This isn't a fiscally responsibility bill, but it does do a couple things that may be good for the economy this coming year. It reduces the cost of labor by cutting the payroll tax, which is one better reason to hire somebody rather than not hiring anybody. It reduces the cost of capital, but with accelerated depreciation. You buy a new plant, a new piece of equipment, write it all off the first year. It has unemployment comp, which is people we all know spend 100%. You get $100 in unemployment comp, you spend $100. So we know that's all good. The only part of it is that last $120 billion out of the $920 billion that goes to the better off people at the top. That's the only part of it that's really bad, though.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Let's
keep in mind that it does blow a hole in the budget. It is going to raise the deficit. And 2 years from now, the Republicans are going to turn around and point their fingers at Barack Obama and say, "See, you ran up the deficit." You know, I mean, let's credit them for hypocrisy.
Yeah, but their supply side argument would be, by the way, the revenues will increase because we've cut taxes. I know somebody named Ronald Reagan that used to argue that. They still believe it. You know, maybe other people have learned better.
When that didn't work.
I know.
His own people, agree that that's nonsense. So,
let me go back. Michael Smerconish, let me try you again. The former President Bill Clinton, who, by the way, walked in there today as if he'd been schooling himself, as he said, an hour every day studying economics, and he was ready on these issues. He said on the tonal question, he said, people like the idea of these two parties getting together per se.
Well, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I think that folks are tired of the split-screen mentality that has now so permeated what's going on in Washington. Here's an observation for you. Imagine that we said to the Tea Party activists 30 or 60 days ago, here's what's going to happen in the immediate aftermath of the election. Something's going to be done to turn the economy around, and that something is going to drive us $900 billion further into debt. What would you say about that? They'd have gone bat blank. And yet, you know, Chris, having taken 4 days of phone calls since they hatched this deal, silence from that wing of the GOP, which I find a bit ironic and in line with what Krauthammer wrote.
Yeah, well, people who are wealthy want the tax cuts. People who want the economy to grow may be happy with it. Let me ask you about your thing you're pushing this Monday. I don't know what it's all about. Mark Penn's wife's involved with Nancy Jacobson. I know the mayor of New York's involved with it. What's this no labels group you're involved with?
The idea being that we need less hyper-partisanship, that we've spent too much time glorifying what goes on the far left and the far right. And I perceive it, and the reason I'm involved is that it's time for there to be an awakening in America's middle, that there's nothing that says weakness about compromise. There's nothing that says weakness about moderation. You know me, I'm plenty passionate about everything, but my views don't fit neatly into those faux, ideologically driven boxes that I think we all perpetuate.
So why don't you fix yourself?
I don't
why don't you get in line with the left or right, Michael? Why don't you fix yourself? Maybe you're the odd man out. Maybe you should be a liberal or conservative.
No, I don't think so, because let me tell you something. When I go to back to school night and when I pump my gas and when I'm buying groceries, I don't meet people the likes of which I meet in the cable TV world or the talk radio world. It's like Saturday morning wrestling. You remember when Vince McMahon was on 29 and 48 in Philly and they had the Grand Wizard of Wrestling and you knew there was the good guy and the bad guy and it was also predictable what they were going to do and say? That's what we've become. And these politicians go to Washington and they emulate what we school them in. Enough.
Okay, but I'm not a media critic. And by the way, it was called Fabiani's Mat Time. I loved it. Let me go back to Ron Reagan. Are you against labels, Ron, or do you like labels?
Oh, you know, I don't care much for labels myself personally, but here we've got to be careful that there isn't a false equivalency here. I mean, the Democrats, you know, sure, there are some people maybe, you know, a little far to the left who are strident sometimes, but for the most part, the partisanship has been coming from the right and the Republican Party. The Democrats weren't the ones who were holding the American public hostage in order to get a tax cut for the rich. That was the Republicans. The Democrats aren't the one who want to use this sort of budget-busting thing to starve the beast. That's the Republicans. The Republicans want to kill the budget so they can come back 2 years later and say, oh, gee, I guess we have to cut Social Security and Medicare. Gee, too bad. That's what they wanted all along.
Ron, I'm with you. You know who was man of the year last year, Michael and Ron? It was Mitch McConnell. I don't like what he did, but he screwed the country out of a decent bipartisan agreement on anything, forcing Obama on every issue from stimulus to health care to FinReg, everything. He had to go to the left. He forced him to build all his coalitions on the left, screwed him over there, then ran against him for being a leftist and a socialist after forcing him to be that. Mitch McConnell engineered that disgusting strategy, but it worked. And I got to keep my eye on what works around here. Thank you very much, Michael Smerconish. Have a nice holiday. Ron, if I don't see you again, good luck with the book. When you come on, you will get some help from me.